All right. Without further ado, let's get Goodwin and Mr. Andy Teasely up here and give them a round of applause. I guess you're on number one. Ooh, that thing's red. I might have to change that. And remember to stand on the marks for me, please.
Stand on our mark?
Yep.
You're going to handle the clicker?
Oh, sorry. There you go.
I was going to bring my mics, and I forgot.
I'll get you some batteries.
Oh, see? Now I get the only mic.
That's still good for now.
Welcome. Who's here for the first Creative Finance Wednesday night? Wow. They're not coming back. We must be doing it wrong.
Well, we have meatballs every single time, so.
Oh, that's it. They're bored with the food. Tacos next time, maybe.
I think we have more claps with the meatballs.
Welcome. Who here wants to buy something? Only a handful. Some of you guys just want to, what, watch houses, knock doors, and don't do anything? We have big hands back there. They're trying to get us closer. These damn things. Marks. That better? You sure? I bet I move.
Who has money to go ahead and buy all these houses that you have your eyes on?
Ooh.
Ooh, not even one.
Jeez. All right. Well, we're here to hopefully teach you some tools that will help you acquire some real estate, even if you don't have lots of money. And I'm going to give you that good one because I'm going to go get a stool. If I gotta hold still.
So as usual, I did this presentation, but it's not going to be as long. You're not going to be here till 9 o'clock this time. And it's going to be actually fairly short in that respect. So we have a set of a few questions that basically pertain to how you acquire property and how Master Leasing can help you in those regards. Okay, and we'll go into detail. We'll answer different things regarding each question. And at the end, if you have more questions, feel free to ask, and we'll see how we can apply Master Leasing to that situation. Okay, so before we get started, does anyone understand what Master Leasing is all about?
Somewhat.
Okay, so before this session, I was speaking to someone who is actually doing a master lease, and in the brief time that we had a conversation, I probably brought up a few ideas that lease could now incorporate. So even if you have done it, there's always something that you can learn about it. And you might also bring up something that we might not have heard of as well. So feel free to speak up at any point in time. This one really is going to be asking a lot of questions.
Yes, lots of interaction. Oh, this is a hot mic. Wow. Anyway, you want to trade?
Nope.
You sure? You need a hotter mic than I do. I have to talk quiet with this thing. So we depend on some lots of questions. So who here would like the definition of a master lease? Oh, good place to start. Would you like to throw a definition out there, or should I?
Go ahead.
So a master lease is a lease with the right to sublet. That means you're going to lease the property. You are the tenant. Got to move, Goodwin. Pretend I don't smell. That's why I got a stool. That's the only way I can stay there. Anyhow, so master lease is a lease where you are the tenant and you are the landlord, because you're going to lease the house that you leased or rent the house that you leased to someone who's going to occupy it, do all the work of maintaining it for you, pay you some rent, and a portion of that rent you will pay to the person that owns the house. Is that clear as mud? Good.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with the first one.
I think it's over there. Did you have a question?
I already have a question.
Cool. I love that.
I know you're going to go into depth of how this is presented and stuff, but wouldn't that be considered a sublease? Like you're sublease, like I'm leasing it from somebody and then I'm subleasing
Yes, it's the lease where you have the right to sublet. Yes. Right. If you don't, they're going to keep hollering at you to get back on your mark.
That's true. Maybe I should.
See, I noticed you waited till they left the room. See, that was just typical. So what's that slide say? I can't read it from sideways.
Yeah, actually, I can't read it that way either.
Go for it. I guess I can read it. A substantial down payment may be needed to make payments manageable. A master lease doesn't involve the immediate purchase of a property, and that means that less funds may be needed to control the use of a property, as with ownership, but more flexible. Now, if somebody has a free and clear house and it's sitting vacant, that doesn't cost them anything, right? So raise your hand. Who thinks it has no cost?
Yeah, who thinks it has no cost?
Who thinks it has no cost except for property taxes? Come on, I heard it out there. We got one brave soul. Anybody else that thinks that property taxes are your only cost? If you have homeowner's insurance because this was your house and you got transferred to Florida and your house is sitting vacant, do you have any insurance on that house? No. Depending on the policy, once it's vacant for 30 to 60 days, you have no insurance if you have a homeowner's policy. You have to purchase vacant house insurance, which is very costly. Do you mow the lawn or do you let it grow until the mayor's son-in-law comes and mows it for $500? Do you let the house sit there and grow mold if you're in a moist climate, or do you run the air conditioner? So as you see, there's a lot of costs in owning a vacant house. So if we can relieve an owner of that cost by leasing their house, are we providing a good benefit to a homeowner? Yes. And he wants a substantial down payment because somebody once upon a time told him that you have to have skin in the game. Sound familiar? But what we're looking for is cash flow, right? So if we lease that house and we negotiate a 25-year lease on that house at some price, whatever it is, can we have cash flow for the next 25 years? If we can keep it occupied. And if the air conditioner craps out, does that necessarily have to be our problem? Yes. Depends on the lease. Typically, if I'm going to do a master lease, I would say anything above $500 is the owner's. So if the roof blows off, if it's a capital expense like that, the water heater, I mean, if it's a repair, I'll probably take care of the repair, but if it needs a brand new water heater, that's going to be the landlord's problem, the homeowner. If the air conditioner has to be replaced, $7,000, I'm not going to do that as the tenant.
Yeah. Let me bring up an example as well that pertains to this particular question. So is there anyone here who had done one of my 2 door knocking trips that I made recently? I don't think so. Okay, so let me go ahead and describe the situation that we ran into on the very first trip, on the very first house we went to door knock at. So a little bit of background. Okay, I'm not typically a door knocker. I'm a paper guy. I'm a private lender, so I basically just move paper and fund and things like that. Okay, once in a while I buy notes as well. But door knocking is when you really want to acquire properties or acquire leads that leads to the control of a property, and maybe somewhere down the line, maybe there's going to be a note, maybe there's going to be a loan, maybe there's going to be some other paper that's involved too. And so I like to be involved with transactions like that. So if you've gone to the previous sessions that we've had, I've asked who wants to go door knocking? Well, somebody actually took me up on those offers. Okay, and so very first trip, I think the night before we picked the city and a restaurant to meet at for breakfast. Okay, and so we all met there and we just kind of described what door knocking was going to be about, what are the ground rules and things like that. Okay, and most of who's here that's an agent? Okay, so agents, you typically are given scripts to go ahead and follow, right? What happens when someone deviates off that script? It can be kind of confusing, right? Because then your instinct is to try and get them back onto that script so that way you could follow the rest of that. Okay, and in human conversation just doesn't work that way. Okay, and so I basically said, there's no script that we're going to follow. We're just going to go ahead and ask questions, and we are going to learn to listen. Okay, so the first house we went to, what looked like a homeowner was there just cleaning up in the front yard, and there's a woman in the back, and we just kind of introduced ourselves, and by the way, everything was random, so city, restaurant to meet at, and after that, okay, you guys pick an intersection for us to go ahead and move our cars to, otherwise we're gonna get parking tickets. Okay, and so they looked on Google Maps and okay, here's the cross streets that are nearby, go to this one. So someone sent that out to everyone, we all moved our cars, parked in the neighborhood, and then, okay, let's pick a house. And so that's what we did. There's somebody out there, and we said, hey, we're just in the neighborhood. We had breakfast at this restaurant over on this main street. Looks like it was really nice. We came out, long wait, and there's people walking up and down. Looks pretty nice. And so we're thinking, you know, sure would be nice to be able to do this every weekend. And so we're looking for a house. Do you happen to know of anyone selling or anything that might be available? And he said, well, in 5 years, I will be selling this house. This is actually my girlfriend's house, and I will be selling my house out in Santa Clarita. And this house is in Monrovia. So quite a bit of distance between the two, right? So they were renting this house, and guess what? You know, they already said they wanted to go ahead and sell. So he basically went into details about what their plan was. They're both working, and so they're not investors like we are. Okay, so we weren't using any investor terms. So I basically wrote down an offer to him. I didn't show it to the other people. Everyone's supposed to go ahead and do their own offer. So I wrote down, Master Lease. I will go ahead and take care of your headaches because you live in Santa Clarita. This property is in Monrovia. Okay, I don't know if you guys kind of get an idea of what that distance is, but it's a pretty long drive in between. Okay, so I will go ahead and take care of that. You will just collect monthly payments. I will maintain the property and we'll go ahead and make sure it's rented and things like that. And at whatever point that you decide to go ahead and move, we can talk about buying the property as well. And if you decide not to move, you still own the property. Okay, you still get the appreciation of that property. You still get the depreciation of that property. Okay, but I get to control that property without having to buy that property. Okay, so this is what this question basically poses to you.
So I have a question.
Yep.
Why didn't you discuss Section 121 with them? Has she been out over 3 years?
She has not been, and that was going to be next, except they decided, okay, we need to go ahead and go back inside the house. So when we have our next meeting, which I hope is going to be soon, that is going to be brought up. And by the way, who understands what Andy just asked me right now?
I'm amazed that no hands went up. See, you guys have got to learn that when we use jargon, stick your hand up and say, what the hell does Section 121 mean? Don't be bashful. Don't be shy. Ask. There we go. See, I love that. And you probably know the answer, but I'll go ahead and give it. So there's a tax code that says if you sell your primary residence where you have lived 2 out of the last 5 years, you get $250,000 per owner tax prepaid. That means that If you are single, you get $250,000 in tax-free profit on your house. If you're married and you're a couple, you get $500,000 in tax-free profit. And being in California, if you're a throuple, then you can get $750,000. A throuple, yes. So if you use that, that's one way to motivate somebody to understand they need to get that house sold before they've been out of it for 3 years. Yes.
I knew that, but I didn't know what code it was. I didn't know if it was a tax code.
Yes, Section 121 is tax code.
I knew all that stuff.
I know about 3 of the tax codes, the ones that count, Section 121, Publication 537, and a couple others, but that's about it. Anyway, back to your story.
Yep. So, master lease. Okay, so that offer was now you don't have to drive out from Santa Clarita to go ahead and maintain the property on a regular basis. And especially after the tenant moves out, I will take care of all of that. You just get regular checks as you want. And when you're ready to go ahead and move, then we can talk about the sale. If you want to talk about it earlier, that's fine too. And when we bring up this discussion, exactly that 121 discussion is going to come up because that was his girlfriend's house. And so I already had this idea, but I didn't want to go ahead and say like, well, if you guys were married and kind of accelerate things, then, but in the.
I don't believe married is part of it. It's just on title.
Oh, yeah, on title, right.
Yeah,
Right,
So
that's
she
true.
could add him to title and probably get the Section 1, get the whole 500 grand
Yeah,
if she has that much equity.
yeah. Okay, so who has questions about this portion, just getting control without having to go and buy the house?
See, I have a question. You know, most of us want to own real estate. We like cash flow, but we want to control it, and we want to make sure that we get to say what's going to happen with it for a very long time. So would you be brave enough to sign a 20-year lease at today's rate? That you can get a lease amount that you can rent the property and make a profit.
I think so, under the right conditions, of course.
So if you had a 20-year master lease on a piece of property, could the owner sell it out from under you?
There could, in my agreements, I would probably say I would want a first right of refusal. I may put in certain checkpoints that say, hey, I want to make an offer to buy the house. Are you ready to sell the house at this point? There could be any number of ways that I could go ahead and try and acquire the house if that's what I truly wanted to do.
But I'm meaner than you, so I'd record the lease. And then if he wants to sell it, he's welcome to sell it, but my lease is ahead of that sale.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm entitled to pay that rent for the next 20 years, whether he owns it or somebody else owns it. So what are the odds he's going to sell it to anybody that's not me?
You record as rental lease?
Don't know. Yeah, absolutely. They frequently are in commercial. Yes.
So going back to your story, so you make this offer basically written down on paper, right? You just say, hey, I'm offering this to you for 5 years. Is that the terms that you were?
You have a contract in your pocket.
3x5 index card. This is your all-purpose contract.
Real
Lines on
estate
one
purchase
side.
agreement.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, I have a favorite place to find leads. You know where it is? Eviction court. What's the worst day in a landlord's life? When he's in the front of the man that puts a black dress on to go to work every day, trying to get a deadbeat out of his property. And if the hero comes up and says, how'd you like to never be here again?
Yeah, or on the day that you have the set out and you have to have their crew out there. Otherwise, they will go ahead and push out that date again. And you need to get everything out by a certain amount of time. So that's not a fun thing to go ahead and do too.
Yes.
Difference between this and property management,
Oh,
as far as legalities are concerned.
okay. Boy, that's a broad question. I like that.
Mhm.
First off, if I'm a tenant and I sublet, what kind of income am I getting? What is it? What kind of income is rental income? Passive income. Do I owe Social Security tax on passive income? No. So right off the bat, no, no, it just avoids the self-employment tax, the Social Security bit, that 15 point some percent that you have to pay. Right. Next question. If I'm a property management, am I the agent of the owner? I love having agents in the room. Yes, you're an agent of the owner. If I get a call from a tester from HUD, and they say I'm a single mom, and I've got 5 kids ranging from 5 to 20 that want to live with me, and I want to rent your 1-bedroom house, and I say it's not going to be appropriate for your family, I just violated the whatever the hell code it is,
Fair housing.
fair housing, and the property owner who hired me to act as his agent is responsible. If I'm a tenant and I say something that's contrary to fair housing, what effect does that have on a landlord? Nothing. He has no control over what his tenant says. I'm not his agent, I'm his tenant. I pay rent. If you're in a state where tenant protection laws are extremely strong, do you want to be the tenant or the landlord? Any other questions? Did I answer everything okay?
So a couple other things. Okay, so again, with master leasing, we're saying that you are not going to own the property at this point in time. You're going to be able to control the property. So what do you not get as basically being the tenant of the property? Well, you don't get the write-off, so you
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
from
What percentage of your lease payment is deductible as a business expense? What percentage of your lease payment is deductible as a business expense?
should be 100%.
100%. So I don't get to write off the depreciation or
Right.
the interest. I get to write off everything. I like everything better.
Right. Okay.
Every dollar every check I write to that homeowner to lease his property for my business purposes is 100% tax deductible. It's a business expense. You're supposed to smile at that. Isn't that cool? Anytime we can stick it to the government, it's a good thing.
Okay, I was waiting for someone to say you don't get appreciation on this. Who thinks that you can't get appreciation on this? You think so? O- Okay, so if you wrote into your master lease that at the time you exercise your option to purchase, or you wrote into your option to purchase, not the master lease side, because that's separate. If you basically said you were going to float that price up or down, okay, and so let's say by a certain percentage, say 10% or something like that, you go out, get an appraisal, and then if that appraisal's high, you pay 10% below market. Did that owner now get some of the upside? Yeah, right? Okay, and so you will also get part of it upside as well, right? Because you're going to be buying this property. Now, in your lease, okay, now I think it's illegal in California. I don't know about other states. A percentage of your lease payment going towards a purchase. I think that's illegal in California now, right?
Nobody ever told me that. Yeah. I don't know any reason that would be illegal. They can, if the contract says, $28 out of every payment goes to increase my option commitment. I don't know any reason that wouldn't be, that is legal as
Okay.
far as I know.
Good.
Better
Okay.
be, I got a whole lot of options recorded out there I'm expecting to get houses on someday.
So how about the reverse side? What if this property value goes down? And previously in your option to buy, you said you were going to agree at a higher price, and now the property has gone down. Okay? Do you now have a potential problem? Because you agreed in some years in the past or sometime in the past, you agreed to go ahead and buy it at a preset arrangement of a price, and now the valuation of that price, the valuation of that property has now gone down. Okay, so if you basically do it by a percentage of the current price, does that protect you potentially buying at that time?
But is it purchase contract or is it an option?
Yeah.
If it's
It's
an option,
option.
you just walk away. Because an option's a unilateral contract. Only one person has the power, and it's not the person that owns the house. It's the person that owns the option.
And what if in your option, let's say the timing is off, and you want to go ahead and extend the master lease at that point in time? As long as you think of these things in advance, you don't have to go ahead and not exercise the option to purchase and now lose that option. You can choose to go ahead and extend that option for some set amount of money or something like that too.
Question.
Yeah, so do you put in the right of first refusal and the option to buy into the master lease?
I like them to be separate documents personally. If I'm selling on a lease option, it's one document. If I'm purchasing on a option and a lease, they'll be two separate documents. I don't want them on the same document. Yes? I'll let you field that one.
Okay, so I am the master tenant of this property, and I'm not the owner, right? So the owner decides, I want to go ahead and sell the property. He forgets that we have documents in place that give me that first right. So he negotiates that price with a potential buyer. And he comes to tell me and says, hey, I've agreed to go ahead and sell the house, and here's the potential buyer. And I say, wow, that's pretty nice, except I think we have a slight problem here. And then I whip out the contract and says, it says here that I have first right of refusal to buy this property. So what was that price that you negotiated? Okay, and it's going to be X amount? Yeah. So I could agree to go ahead and buy the house at that point in time for that price.
To match the price. So
Yep.
it's right of first refusal means before you can sell it to anybody else, he has to offer it to you at the same price. And if you write a good one, it gives you like 90 days. You got 45 days to decide and another 45 days to fund. So who wants to wait 90 days while you dither?
Yeah.
And a quick question, when Rob was question about the two different documents, you would do them separately, is there a reason why?
Sure.
Why would you do
If I'm selling and I want the lease and the option tied together. So if he screws up and doesn't pay his rent, if he screws up and doesn't take care of my house, if I have to evict him, do I want him to still have that option? No. I want that option to expire because it's all part of the same document and we're going to expunge it all in court. If I'm the person acquiring, I want my option to stand alone and my lease to stand alone. Because I might decide that leasing this house is not in my best interest anymore, but I still want the right to buy it at whatever price I've negotiated. So we don't tie them together when we're buying. Yes?
You had brought up the scenario, and maybe I didn't hear how it's where you said you work out a pre-adjusted price and say, okay, 5 years I'm going to buy it for this amount of money. But let's say, like you mentioned, the price instead of going up, goes down. What happens there? I didn't hear that part.
If I made arrangement in that option that the way we were going to go ahead and set the price, because like who has a crystal ball that's 100% accurate?
Mine is. I can guarantee you real estate prices are going to go one of three ways.
3 ways. See, my crystal ball knew that too.
See? Never failed at that prediction. So Pete tells a story about helping a widow out and saving her house and making it so she could afford to put a roof on her house. And he had an option that he timed poorly. And his option expired in 2010. The only problem was that his option price, he looked like a genius in 2006 and 2007 because the value of the house was substantially higher than his option price. In 2010, the value of the house was substantially lower than his option price. And he tried to buy another 10 years, and the lady just laughed at him. She apparently understood what was going on. So, yeah, we call that scars and T-shirts, and something to talk about in the classroom.
So to go ahead and further answer that question, you would build in an additional extension that, okay, I will pay you $500 to be able, for the right to be able to extend another year, $500 a year, so you can pay $1,000 and extend it for 2 years. Okay, and so that keeps your option in place. That gives them some compensation. Okay, and so that way your crystal ball can unfog and become crystal again, and maybe your pricing will then make sense. Or you could basically do it as I mentioned before, just say, okay, at appraisal minus a certain percentage, that's going to be fair for both parties, right? And that will work out, and so that's another way to go ahead and handle it too.
Or you can put the termination date of your option after at some point when you expect to be on the wrong side of the grass. So my options typically run 40 years. And at 102, I'm not sure I want to exercise that option. Behind you, Ray.
What happens if you guess wrong, you get a master lease, and then you just can't lease it to anybody else, and you're hurting because you can't, it's empty on you?
Okay, that actually is, so we are on question number 1. Okay, and we have 6 questions. And at this rate, maybe we will have to go ahead and plan for 9 o'clock. Okay, but actually your question actually comes up as part of one of the other ones. So save that thought.
Have we killed this one? A way to control property without a big down payment?
Yeah, I hope so, because I just moved to the next one.
Oh, that's good. Some property may require a large rehab on initial purchase. While the rehab involved with the master lease may be the same as with the purchase, maybe even more, the monetary amount may be applied towards future expenses such as monthly payments. Who keeps the investment made during the rehab?
Yeah, so think about it. Okay, so you own a property and it's sitting there vacant. You've been trying to bring in a tenant, had no success. You know that there's work needed on this property, maybe some updates, and they're not minor updates either. Maybe the kitchen needs really updating, maybe 1 or 2 walls need to be moved, maybe flooring, painting, maybe a bathroom upgrade as well. Maybe the landscaping needs to be refreshed.
You might need to put the kitchen back in that the tenant stole.
So substantial
Ask me how I
funds,
know.
right? So how many have that kind of change in your pockets just to go ahead and do it anytime to one of your investment properties? Most of us will not have that kind of reserve, right? Okay, so someone comes up to you and says, I will go ahead and put in this X amount of dollars into your property. And what I want in return is the ability to help take some of these funds towards these payments that I'm going to be making to you. And you think, okay, well, how many of these improvements can he take with him, right? So if someone totally renovates your kitchen, can they take that with them? No. And same thing with the master bathroom, and same thing with the landscaping and flooring and other things. Go ahead.
Ray has a perverse question. I can tell from his face.
Yeah.
I'm just curious on Andy's story, which disagrees with you.
Okay.
Oh, what? I don't think the tenant took it with him. I think they just destroyed it. Well, actually, I take that back. All the bottom cabinets in the kitchen were gone. No idea where they went. Probably firewood, knowing those idiots. And there was a hole in every door, in every wall. And that's when I learned farmers' landlord insurance is wonderful, because they paid me 3 times what it took to fix it.
So who thinks in that scenario, the property owner is getting a good deal? Because nothing out of their pocket, because there's no tenant there to begin with, and someone's going to go ahead and do all these improvements that you wanted to go ahead and do yourself. You didn't have to take out a loan on one of your other investment properties or exercise your HELOC and have to go ahead and pay that back. Someone's going to do that, and in return, they want some deduction from the payments that they're going to make to you. So they're going to get credit back, all right? You'll still get some cash, and you're happy about that, because right now, it's just costing you money, right? Okay, so here's a way to go ahead and solve someone else's problem and take care of the stuff that they want to do that they can't afford to go ahead and do. Now, what's in it for you, right? Now you have this property that's fully upgraded to the level that you want. You can get more attention to it because now it's up to snuff in that marketplace. So where someone may not have wanted it in the previous condition, now it's in a more presentable condition. Okay, so now you have that ability. Now, you basically are going to reduce part of your monthly payments and recover your rehab costs, right? Okay, so are you getting your money back? Okay, did the property owner have to pay interest or anything else on those funds? Did they have to go through, submit documents to a bank and make sure their credit score is good and look at the debt to income ratio for those things, you know, if they're looking for those kind of things? And do they have to have the lien secured against their property? No. Okay, but you're protected because you're going to go ahead and potentially put a lien on the property for your rehab, okay, and you're going to go ahead and deduct it. That's one way you can go ahead and secure it. You don't have to, but you can go ahead and do that. Okay? So you didn't have to buy the property, right? So did you have to put a down payment to buy a property, even at 3%, 5%? Did you have to even put a down payment at all? No. Okay, because you're working this out within the master lease agreement with a potential option as well. Okay, now rehab, okay, yeah, you pay for that. You would have paid for that anyway, but you would have had to have a higher entry price if you were actually acquiring a property. Okay,
I have a question. This master lease, can it be on commercial property or is it just residential?
There's many, many master leases on commercial property. Yeah. New slide.
yep,
Can
so
you read
this
that
is,
one?
yeah, so this is question number 3. Okay, so when you buy a property, how quickly can you move out of that property?
Depends on how desperate you are.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time when you buy a property, your exit is to sell the property, right? Okay, so how quickly can you sell the property?
6 months?
Yeah, it depends, right? Now, when you sell the next day, is it usually advantageous to you or advantageous to the buyer? To the buyer, right. Okay, so here's something that you can put into your lease. So this happened to someone I knew in Arizona. So Arizona, they were putting in light rail. So they have purchased they had just purchased a property, and before they purchased the property, light rail was just one of those things they were just talking about, you know, kind of like 20, 30, 40 years talking about a freeway. All of a sudden it's there, and now, you know, next day it's already jammed. But over there, yeah, they had light rail built, and now they're going to tear up the street and the access, and it's going to be in that kind of condition for 2 years. So if you had to work around construction, who do you think is going to go ahead and now occupy this property that you now master lease? okay, with all this kind of construction going by. This doesn't work very well for you, right? Okay, so you can put into your master lease that under certain conditions that you are able to go ahead and exit out of that lease within 30 days notice. Okay, and it can be under conditions like this. Okay, out of things out of your control, out of the property owner's control, that certainly it's not going to make sense. Okay,
You
and
can
so-
put that in your lease?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yep.
Not a rule against it?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. So, can you do this with your house? Not that easy to do with a house that you own, right? Okay, but with a master lease, yeah, you can basically say, hey, this is not going to work, and so I'm going to give you X amount of days notice, and we're going to go ahead and pack up our stuff, and we'll go ahead and. This is an opportunity if you're working with an owner that has multiple properties. We can say, do you have another property that we can go ahead and move our lease over to? Yeah. And certainly someone understands that's going to be a problem for that one problem property. Okay? And you can say, yeah, if you have another property that's suitable, we'd be happy to go ahead and move it over to that property instead, and we'll continue to lease from there.
You have to redo the contract and put the new property name and everything?
You would, yeah, you would go ahead and specify the details based upon how the performance of that property is going to be. So let's say it's a higher end property, they may want a higher dollar amount on a regular basis. And still there could be some rehab amount, you apply the same thing as what we talked about before. And then again, if the house is rented out, maybe you're gonna go ahead and pay a little bit more. If the house is not rented out, maybe you will pay a little bit less as well. So you renegotiate that one, but certainly if it makes sense, let's go ahead and move this lease over to another one. We're not gonna totally abandon this relationship. We like working with you, and I hope you like working with us. I hope you like, even if the street's torn up, you can see how the property is. It's like almost a new condition with all the remodeling stuff is still there, right? Okay, so, you know, we may not have finished doing all the rehab or recoup of the rehab costs. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we rework this and redo the numbers and go to another property and continue from there. And whatever point this property now gets stabilized again, now we can go ahead and either create a new one and now master lease 2 properties, or just move that lease back to this one.
So if you're simply moving the lease over to the new property, would that be considered an addendum to the lease, or would you have to do a brand new lease? And keeping in mind all the things.
Would depend on how you drafted.
Right.
Either way, you could either draft an entirely new lease, or you could just addendum it, yes.
Yeah, so you're looking out for the property owner's best interests as well. So obviously with streets torn up, maybe there's only one way to get to get to that property. And with the road construction, none of that stuff is fast. And there could be noise and other considerations too. So usually they totally understand how that situation is. Okay, that's really their issue. And because you have this performance clause in there, you are exercising your right, but you also agree to put in another clause saying that if it works out to be mutually beneficial to both parties, if this property owner has another one that they would like to have this lease moved over to, we can go ahead and renegotiate all these details, apply funds, apply conditions and things like that. For the remainder of the lease, new lease, however you want to go ahead and do it.
Or you can just find a deaf bicycle guy. A deaf guy that rides a bicycle because he's one of those glow ball nuts.
Yep.
Doesn't want to use any gasoline.
Okay, so everyone understand the problems with buying a property sometimes, that sometimes it's not so easy to exit out, but with a master lease, you can put in conditions to either extend, in other words, stay longer, or cut shorter, okay? You have that ability as well. Okay, and we touched upon this a little bit earlier. So this one is cannot align the expenses with the income, right? So we talked about what if the property you're able to go ahead and rent out, okay? And because it's rented, now you are covering not only the contractual obligations that you have with the property owner, but you're also making money as well. Now, if you have the reverse condition or a reverse situation where you're obligated to go ahead and pay a monthly amount to that property owner, but it's not occupied, could you build in something that, yeah, under those kind of conditions, I will pay you slightly less, and other conditions, I will pay you slightly more?
How easy is it today to buy with a bank loan a cash flowing rental house? Kind of tough, right? So if you buy a nice house on a golf course somewhere with a bank loan, and you're fairly high up in management, you can afford to live there. So you're house poor, as we used to say, and the boss comes along and says, "Hey, I need you to go to Minnesota and take over the Minnesota branch." And suddenly you've got to pack your family up and move across country. Can you rent that house and break even? Probably not, right? So could we, as master leasers, come in and lease that house from him at a price that makes sense to us, alleviate him of mowing the grass, having that high cost vacant house insurance, having all the other issues of a vacant house, and reduce the amount he's feeding the alligator every month, because instead of an empty house, now he has a rented house, but the rent doesn't cover his cost. Is he better off? Yes or no? Yes. So we can always help somebody out of the quicksand. We can throw them a branch or a rope and pull them out of the quicksand. So they're still sinking, but they're sinking slower. But we don't climb into the quicksand for them, right? I think you just skipped one. No, you just go
Yeah,
back up.
I went
There
back.
you go. Little or no equity, really. And little no cash flow.
Yeah. Do you guys ever see situations like that? Yeah. So what can you do? Okay, there's no equity, little to no equity, and you try and do a normal rent. Yeah, little to no cash flow. How does that work? Okay, for the property owner, if you're on that side of the teeter-totter or that side of the equation, it's probably not a good position to be in, right? Okay, someone comes up to you. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, especially if you're a lousy landlord and you can't rent it, or you can't choose a decent tenant because you're desperate and you take anybody that shows up, and you've turned it, and the longest you've had a tenant stay is 4.5 months, and every time you get it back, it's full of empty beer cans. Would we be, if you were willing to lease that to a master lessor at some price that made sense for the lessor, but didn't cover your 100% of your costs, are you better off? Yes. And eventually, is that pendulum going to swing the other way? Most likely.
Yeah, so depending on how your master lease is structured, if you have a multi-year master lease, is it going to be that one set amount for the entire duration of the lease? Probably not. You probably will have some kind of escalation. Year one, it'll be X. Year two will be X plus some amount. Year three will be that year two's amount with another bump up, right? Okay, so for that property owner, okay, even losing money the first year, 2 years, even 3 years, at that point, it's palatable because they can see the light at the end of the tunnel after so much time. Okay, and so look at the example that I have. I think I have, what, 3,500? Okay, and that is your immediate expense. And no matter how that's composed of, your mortgage, utilities, insurance, other things like that, all rolled in, that's just a number, right? And let's say you only have to pay $300 a month versus $3,500 a month. Are you willing to go ahead and take that lesser pain over this greater pain? Yeah, probably so, especially when you can show it's going to be 300 for the first year. We're going to escalate our payment to you. This could be reduced to 150 out of your pocket in that second year. In that third year, you're completely out of the hole. Now it's down to zero.
Yes.
Why would a property owner choose to do a master lease as opposed to hiring a property manager?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Like I said, the liability is one. Flexibility is another.
And I think the obvious one is that a property manager is not going to start making payments at that point, right? They offer that service to go ahead and get a tenant in. You are the tenant. You are saying, I am going to lease your house. This is how much I'm offering you at this point. That's not what a property manager does, right? They don't guarantee payments. But you as a tenant, you're basically saying, not only will I guarantee your payments for that first year, I want to go ahead and do this because you've done your research. I like this property. I like the house. I like the location. I think I can do things with it. It may cost me some money. Okay, I'm not going to buy the house at this point, but I'm going to put in potentially a sizable contribution on the rehab. Obviously, I can't take the rehab out, and I'm going to help take care of your cash flow situation at that same time.
You had a question.
Yeah, so.
CRS, it's going to be the death of all of us. And you had a question. Oh, just stretching. Okay. Anybody else that has a question? Mike?
So one of the reasons you would do a lease option is because you don't have money for a down payment, right? One of the reasons.
Well, we haven't really talked about a lease option yet. We just talked about master leasing.
Should I ask it later?
No, I mean just.
Okay. All right, so you have this option.
Okay.
Things work out well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 3-year option. Appreciation happens. You now have the option to buy this house at $400,000. The price is now $500,000. What kind of loan are you looking at to now purchase this house without coming out of pocket with this situation?
So it would depend. So I have options that I've written where my option strike price is some number above the balance of the mortgage. Quite often, not much more than my option fee, because I want my option fee to apply to the purchase price because that makes it tax-free to the seller. And you know, I have this religious thing about taxes. So that's one possibility. Everything's negotiable.
So one thing to go ahead and add on to that, make sure, so I think the option that you were looking at, was this a primary residence? No? Okay. But if you ever get into a situation where, like the example that Andy was talking about, maybe like a corporate transfer, okay, you can make that easy because that's a primary residence and you will do a master lease with an option to buy in 2 years. Why is that 2 years important? Andy already mentioned it with that section 121. Okay, if they've already done this corporate transfer, they may not be wanting to go ahead and live in an apartment, you know, for 2 years, you know, if it's a family. Okay, so they probably are looking at, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this more as a permanent move. I want to at least buy a house or something like that. Okay, so 2 out of the previous 5 years is one of the conditions for that section 121. So you want to remind them, okay, if you are going to exercise this exemption on the taxes to be covered, you want to go ahead and do it within this time frame. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways that you can look at applying a master lease along with other potential techniques. Okay, and someday I will talk about the scenario that I learned from Pete and Andy's familiar with this, my 1031 target. Okay, I don't know if I can spend a whole session on it, but this is something we bring up on exchangers all the time. Okay, it's a combination of like 5 different techniques all in one that benefits all the parties that are involved. But applying other techniques with the master lease, you can do a lot of potential deals. So going back to the door knocking, I'm looking at the master lease potential with that very first one that we met in a random city, in a random intersection. Okay, the second door knocking, we just did that this past weekend. We did the same thing, random city, random restaurant, random intersection, and we came across a property, or we came across someone who knew of someone else, okay? And that other one potentially has 2 options, okay? And so it's not master lease, but it's options, so I only bring it up because you mentioned options, but that's something else that we're gonna bring up in another creative finance session as well.
You had a question?
Yeah, as a homeowner, how would the option to buy benefit the homeowner? 'Cause it seems like it only, if you would share the upside but you don't share any downside, what benefit would the homeowner, what incentive do they have to even have that option in the contract?
So the question is, what is the benefit of having an option for the homeowner who's got a problem that we can solve? We should do a whole night on options. But
That's gonna be a future session.
yeah. So just for one quick example, the last option I did, the guy was 10 days from losing his house at the tax sale. He needed $14,000 and change. So I purchased for $15,000 the right to buy his house, not for 5 years, but in 5 years I can buy his house for $65,000, and the $15,000 I paid for that option applies, so that $15,000 went to him tax-free. So he had no way to keep his house if he hadn't done that deal with me. And this way he has actually got his house. I can't do anything for at least 5 years. After that, I have another 35 years to exercise my option. And I granted him the right to kick the can. So any month he sends me $200, I add a month to that 5 years. So we solved his problem. He didn't lose his house. He's still living in the house, enjoying it. And I will one day get his house for less than half what it's worth.
Okay, so sort of this next question addresses your question. Someone who owns a property, how does it benefit them in terms of, do they need to sell? Maybe yes, maybe no. So when I talked about one of my earlier examples, the very first house and the very first door knocking trip, he said, yeah, and what we're planning is we're gonna sell both of our properties in 5 years. They're gonna move to the Carolinas, and they're gonna use that money to go ahead and buy. So I'm already thinking section 121, we really need to talk about this sooner, but I don't want to go and throw this jargon up and kind of get other things going at that point. So I said, okay, how about if I just take care of your immediate headaches? But what if they decide not to sell?
What if it's that house that they inherited from mom, and they're still working in a different state, and when they retire, they're going to move there because it's a nice place to live. And in the last 6 years, they've had 8 tenants. Is that a good landlord? Probably not. So, but does he want to sell the house? No, because he's going to retire there someday. So if you sit down and determine that he's not likely to retire for 12 years, and you negotiate a 12-year master lease, does everybody win? Potentially. And things change. He might decide he really loves his job and won't retire in 12 years. So he's going to work another 10. So now you're up to 22 years of cash flow. And then maybe the wife dies, so now he's not going to move at all. And he finally says, yeah, I want you to buy my house. So you're developing a long-term relationship with people.
Yeah, for most of this is going to be 90% solving their problem as opposed to you trying to acquire a property. now because you solved their problem. I mean, just taking the management headache off the shoulders of a property that they've already tried getting a tenant for, that they know is under market, in terms of amenities, things like that. Now you're bringing it up, literally no further cost to them, and now you have some cash flow coming in. And this is just not a one-year deal. This would potentially be multiple years. And you didn't have to sell the property, because most of the time you think, okay, I have to sell this property to you, right? No. Maybe I like this property, I like having the use of it, but I want to go ahead and have my money work better in other ways. So I just want to control this property. That's what the master lease does for you. Allows you to go and control the property to where you have income coming in without the additional cash outlay normally expected for acquisition of properties in the traditional sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this how a lot of people are doing the Airbnb to get master leases?
That's a very popular way to get Airbnb houses, is
Right.
the master lease.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this is called arbitrage in the short-term rental world. This is exactly how it's done.
Yes.
Is there a minimum length of time that you guys usually put your leases for?
Oh, I can't imagine doing a master lease for anything under 7 years. Because my tenants typically stay 12. My average tenancy is 12 years. So once I get you into one of my houses, you're supposed to die there. That's what you agreed when we did the lease. We did the lease, and I said, by the way, how long do you want to live in this house? No, a long time. I said, good. So you're telling me that you're not going to leave that house until you go in the black station wagon, right? And they always chuckle, and I said, no, I mean it. If you don't want to stay in my house forever, I'll rent it to somebody else.
And in case that black station wagon reference kind of went over your head, just kind of
Really?
add some curtains along the sides and sometimes a police escort.
Lots of headlights.
Okay, that's question number 6. It's not so bad because we don't have any other questions marked on the slides.
Cool. So who has a question out there? Yes.
So if you own a home and you, if you rent it long-term, you don't get the tax benefits.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. If you own a home and rent it long-term, I don't pay any taxes because I do that 30 times over.
Is there, I guess, what I'm trying to get to, is there a benefit of owning a property, starting an LLC, and then master leasing it to your LLC as a business?
Well, in California, owning an LLC is just kind of counterproductive to anything. So, and don't get too damn complicated with things. The IRS gets annoyed with that, and they will figure you out. So I just rent stuff. And our government really rewards us handsomely for being housing providers. Like I said, I pay self-employment tax on my handyman business. That's it. Everything else is covered with offsets and expenses. Yes?
So, when you're doing a deal like this, are you, let's say I work something out with you, you're the property owner, I work out this master lease. That's a good question you brought up. Would you normally put it under your name, or do you put it under an entity name, like an LLC or something else?
So I do everything in trusts. I'm a trust guy. If you ever take my class, you will hear, I will actually lend you, you're free to steal it because I won't give it to you, my trust documents.
Yeah.
Because
Let me-
I'm not an attorney.
Let me bring up an example from this last door knocking thing that we did. Okay, so we walked one street. We walked both sides of that one street. So we literally just from one end of the street to the other end of the street. So one block, both sides of the street. What we found out is that one of these houses was a church. And across the street from this church lived the city councilman, one of the city councilmen for the city of Monrovia, and he supports that church. Okay, and so he came over to go ahead and talk to us and tell us about, how this church operates and things like that. And as we were checking out the rest of the houses on that street, turns out that church, or the who owns the property for that where that church is, owns multiple properties on that street, but not. And the way this church operates, it's more like for homeless, and this is why the city is supporting it. So there's a parking lot that is for the church, and there's apparently at least 2 houses that are owned by that same property owner, but it doesn't look like they're using it for anything else in storage. So part of the negotiation that we're going to have when we go back and visit, this is now a second visit to someone else, not the one that we're going to do the options with, right? That was somebody else. We're going to go back and say to the church, so how do you get funds in for this church? And most of the time it's going to be donations. So we're going to go ahead and say, so what if we were able to go ahead and provide a steady source of income based upon assets that the church owns at this point in time? And they may have no idea what we're talking about. And we would probably say something like, well, we understand the church owns this particular property that is done, at how we've initially found it. Are there other properties that are owned that are not being really used to its full potential? Yeah, I happen to have 2 across the street. We use them just for storage right now. Okay, so what if, now do you think a church is going to have the money to go ahead and do rehab and things like that to a property? Probably not, because they're just going off donations just to go ahead and do what they're doing right now. Okay, so what if we master leased one of these properties, we put in the investment to do the rehab, and we did the rental for that property, and now we guarantee you steady income, more than what you are getting right now? Because if you're using it for storage, is it making you money? Even if you own that property 100%, no mortgage on it, is it making you money? Yeah, it's costing you money, right? Exactly how we started off the conversation.
In the event that I could rent that house from you for $1,000 a month, is there any reason you wouldn't rather have the $1,000 a month than the storage space? Answer's probably no, which is what we want. We always ask no questions when we negotiate.
So without saying that we know, because we do know, because we did door knocking. This is how we found out. The neighbors basically said, oh, the church owns that property. Oh, the lady across the street, yeah, they own that property and that property and that property. Great. You try looking that up on a list somewhere and trying to figure out who does what and how this might work out. Okay, with door knocking, this is the kind of stuff you find out, right? One street, one random street in a random city. Okay, so we have 2 opportunities for 2 options on one side, okay, and this is working with the city, because the city wants to see what they can't do from what the city currently offers. And I said that we represent the private sector. We have more than just this group of people that you see here. We have a whole group of people just like us, just looking for ways that we can help any particular community. And so when we sit down with that first homeowner, we're going to be sitting down with that councilman too. And if we're able to go ahead and get them the options for the funding to go ahead and get the things done that they need to have done that the city couldn't provide, do you think the city will potentially provide us with more opportunities like that? Yeah, probably so.
Question.
In the event that a homeowner is actually in the process of losing their home and you guys sign a master lease agreement, what happens to your investment at the time that the home gets taken back by the bank?
Why would I let them take that house away?
That's what I'm asking, is that you have to write that clause into the master lease?
No, I mean, if I master lease your house, I'm going to get we know you're in a problem. You're going to,
What if we don't know that they're in a problem?
then we're not paying attention. I mean, you have to develop a relationship with people, and if they're about to lose their house to foreclosure, they're probably going to say, "Oh, I'd really love to lease you my house, but we're going to have they're going to have a foreclosure coming up."
Or say in 5 years, 10 year, 5 years into your 20-year master lease,
Hmm.
in the event.
Then I'm going to step in and help.
Yeah,
Uh,
but ideally, because we've shown enough to where we're making those payments and whether they actually use those payments correctly or not. If they run into trouble and say, hey, you know, I ran into a problem, the house is now in foreclosure, I know you have first right of refusal, are you interested in buying the house at this point?
And I'm actually in the middle of negotiating a deal with, I have an option and a remainder interest in a house that belongs to a couple. And I'm currently negotiating with their lender. Their lender died, the kids inherited, they told them, don't make payments till we get the estate settled out. Now they're saying, aha, we tricked you, you haven't been making payments, we're gonna foreclose. So what are they gonna do? What's the first thing they do? They call Andy. And I'm negotiating. I will most likely end up buying that note at a discount. Well, someone I know will buy it, so it's not me. And then they'll be making a mortgage payment to somebody's retirement account. I hope. Yes? I don't know. I've never had one. If I put somebody in, they stick. But obviously, if it's my tenant, I'm going to be responsible for the eviction.
Mm-hmm.
And my master leases have all been fixed. There are people that talk about doing, 90% of whatever I collect type master leases. I'm greedier than that. I don't mind taking a chance and paying rent to a house that I haven't got leased, or pay lease payments on a house I haven't got rented. But then I'm crazy and brave.
Yeah, keep in mind that your master lease is for an extended period of time, multiple years. Your sublease could be written as month to month. So when you have someone that's month to month, are you really doing an eviction at that point? Are you really just extending them month to month at that point?
Well, you still may have an eviction if you chose poorly. Yeah, Denise.
Right.
Okay, I have a question. What if you want to master lease a property that already has a tenant that's not paying in there?
Well, that might be a motivation to get that master lease.
Right, but then as the person that's doing the master lease, it would be my responsibility to get that person out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I might move a big, ugly, smelly guy in with him.
And then when it comes to the price, how do you negotiate what the monthly rent is going to be? Like, what, do you go off of comps, or, and then how do you know how much to give the owner and how much to keep?
Well, I have an advantage in that I have a very small farm. So if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in my farm, do you think I know what I can rent it for?
And then how do you know what to give the owner, though? Like, is it a percentage? Is it a...
Well, whatever I can get away with. If I can keep half for me and half for him, I'm going to do it. But, if that doesn't make their mortgage payment, doesn't make a dent in their mortgage payment, then that's kind of hard to negotiate. Remember, it's two people coming together and negotiating a contract. Was that a wave or a stretch or a question? Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
One thing I would point out or share, solar, you can do a lease as well. You combine the master lease with the master solar, there's some huge value and benefits there.
Interesting.
So, Lee, do you know any solar guys?
Well, thank you, gang. Just in kind of closing, I want to point out that master leasing is just one more tool in your creative finance toolbox. If you decide you're going to run out and everything's going to be a master lease, you'll find yourself getting disappointed. Hopefully, in all these Wednesday nights with us on third Wednesdays, you will come away with a lot of different ways to structure deals that make sense for you. So please, just consider it one more tool to put in your toolbox.
Right. All the sessions that we've had so far have been trying to go ahead and show you one tool at a time. What are the situations that you're able to apply it? What are the pros? What are the cons? Each successive session at that point, outside of exchangers, you're really seeing everything happen live based upon what's being brought up on the board at that time. But every other creative finance session, we're trying to add more tools to your toolbox. And what's going to be coming up in one of the sessions next year will be all of these different tools presented at one time. And potentially we're going to ask someone, give us a situation, and we'll see from this toolbox how we can construct a solution for that.
Going back a little bit, you mentioned about the two houses that belong to the church. Well, one of my ex-churches, the parsonages, most of you know pastors now don't prefer to live in the parsonage. They want to have a place away from the next door to the church. But the church is renting the parsonages now. And the city is saying, hey, that's no longer part of the church. That's a commercial business that you're in now. And the tax is no longer,
Tax-free.
have to pay the taxes now.
Right. Can't help with that. We could reduce it somehow, probably.
So you can't tell them we're gonna make $1,000 a month because they're gonna be paying taxes on that $1,000 a month rent.
Yeah. Doesn't government suck?
One last question. You mentioned that you have your properties under trust. You created a new trust for every property you own?
Everyone. You know what do you know the biggest variance in the cost of creating a trust? Whether you use name brand inkjet cartridges or recycled ones.
Yeah, the trusts, they don't get recorded. They really don't get sent anywhere. No one knows what's in the trust because it's in a file somewhere in your desk or something like that. And no one else can get a hold of it.
Cool. Well, thanks, gang. I hope I see most of you tomorrow from noon to 2. Glad you joined us, in spite of it being a small class and quiet today. This is not our usually rowdy crowd. So we need more. Oh, next month is the time machine.
Is it?
I think it is.
We'll have that in addition.
Isn't that the class next month, is time machine? Seller finance.
Seller finance.
Well, okay.
All right, let's give these guys a round of applause.
Thank you, thank you. All right, who wants to do a master lease? All right, who wants a lead on a master lease? I know a guy. Pretty well. Pretty well. He talks in my head sometimes. He doesn't shut up. That's really annoying. So I have a property up in Running Springs, California. It's 30846 Live Oak Drive. If you want to write that down, 30846 Live Oak Drive. It is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, built in 1985. I'm looking to master lease that for $3,500 a month. And if you are interested in that, come talk to me. You could do. I'm looking for somebody long term. You can do whatever you want to it. I just need $3,500 a month and a fairly decent security deposit, so that if you put in tenants and they wreck the place, I can at least put some of it back together, and it's yours. So if you're interested in that, come find me. And like Andy said, we're going to be back here for exchangers tomorrow at 12 o'clock in here. And I do have one other thing I wanted to share with you guys. Who remembers our story, Evan and I's story and Angela's story, about the house with the scaffolding? Anybody else? 4 of you? And the paint job? Yeah. Guess what got sold today? Finally, after a year-long project, $170,000 rehab, and $30,000 paint job, and $10,000 scaffolding, and a lot of lessons learned along the way about what not to do on a flip. Even though I've done, 60 of them, you're still learning every time. So never stop learning. Like Andy said, always be ready to put new tools in your pocket. It all matters. And there's always different solutions for every single seller out there. So thanks for coming. We'll see you guys tomorrow at Exchangers, all right? Have a good night.